Pupco Studios in Oklahoma City. You are watching our Football Friday Hangout. I'm Jenni Carlson, sitting in for the, well, I thought he was vacationing, Mike Sherman, but he's actually joining us on the Hangout. So I guess maybe not entirely vacationing. We're going to turn to our panel of college football experts. Let's see who we've got on today's Hangout. Let's start with Gina Mizell. Gina, tell us where you are, and everybody, you got to tell me, is your Christmas shopping done?
I am at my apartment in Stillwater, waiting on some workers to come to fix a leaking pipe. Thank you, freezing weather. I have a leaking pipe. And no, my Christmas shopping is not even close to being done. This time last year, I was all set. I did really well on Black Friday, but with Bedlam later and Thanksgiving later, I realized today or yesterday that I have a lot that I need to do. So I'm probably going to be one of those last-minute shoppers this year. All
right, enough with the excuses. You and I have got to get after it, Gina. All right, Jason, where are you, and is your Christmas shopping done?
I'm at my house, and absolutely not.
Honesty right there. All right, Mike Sherman, where are you, and is your Christmas shopping done?
I'm at the compound in north of Edmond. And I have not finished loading up Amazon with all my shopping, so no, it's not done yet.
The Amazon Santa about to pay a visit to the Sherman household. Very good. All right, folks. Well, let's rewind a little bit before we look ahead, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the college football world that affects folks around here, and we want to get to that in a minute. But let's start by talking a little bit about Bedlam in terms of some of the fallout. Berry Tramel, who I think will be joining us here at some point, wrote earlier this week, and several of you have written about this in blogs and stories as well, but the end of the Bedlam game and the rivalry seeming to intensify, the heated nature of things that happened there at the end of the game. Gina, you've heard from fans, I'm sure, on the OSU end of things. What have you heard in terms of the way that game ended and sort of the Bedlam behaving badly? Is there fallout amongst Cowboy fans?
Well, sure. I mean, when you talk about the cheerleader and that whole situation, and obviously we did a story on that last Monday, and then he came out, Jared Atkinson came out and apologized publicly, and the Big 12 had a public reprimand and all that good stuff. So yeah, there's certainly still fallout, and you know, Barry obviously wrote his column about Bedlam behaving badly. I believe it was for yesterday. So yeah, there's definitely some fallout from that perspective, but I mean, Cowboy fans are still I don't want grieving is a harsh word, but are still definitely feeling the fallout. I mean, I've heard from people who are still wondering about the play clock on that fake field goal, or wondering why Mike Gundy didn't challenge Justin Gilbert's interception, where even though it's pretty clear that he didn't come down with the football and corral it all the way through the play, but yeah, fans are still not happy about it. And I've even heard from some that just are fed up with this Bedlam problem and not being able to beat the Sooners. And some have said they're not going to the Cotton Bowl for that reason. And so it's been very interesting to kind of hear all the different perspectives from folks, you know, that are not happy about the way that Saturday played out, I suppose.
Well, Jason, what about from your perspective, from the OU fans? Have you heard? What have you heard? I mean, obviously there's jubilation after the game. I mean, here the Sooners are playing essentially their third-team quarterback, playing a scheme that they really hadn't practiced and winning that game on the road. Obviously a lot of joy and excitement, but what's sort of been your email inbox feeling as this week has gone on?
Well, I mean, I think that OU fans are, like you said, they're elated about the victory. But I think they're, you know, a lot of the emails I've gotten have been just, you know, about how classless they thought the OSU fans were to throw snowballs, or the cheerleader for trying to trip Eric Stryker, etc. I mean, there was plenty of blame to go around, though, on both sides of that deal. You know, I think at our meeting this week we were talking, there's sort of a line that you don't cross. The players can't go in the stands, and the fans can't throw things onto the field, and that's sort of the line that the fans crossed in that instance. But I think for the most part, OU fans are excited about the win. I also think they're terrified of Alabama.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, hey, if fans want to get in on the conversation, they can input questions at newsok.com/live. We'll get to your questions if we can, but let's bring Berry Tramel into the conversation. Barry, before we get your thoughts on Bedlam, tell us where you are, and I made everybody answer this question, so you're on the hook too. Is your Christmas shopping done?
Well, I'm at home. And the question about the Christmas shopping is interesting. I haven't done any, but it might be finished. Sometimes I don't have to do any. Sometimes.
Lucky duck.
Hey.
I really only have to buy for Trish the dish. So sometimes my daughter takes care of it for me. So she's done some. I need to check on that. The problem is tomorrow's her birthday.
Oh.
So I get hit with a double whammy here. So if you're asking me if the birthday shopping is done, the answer to that is no.
All right, fair enough. You might want to get on that after the hangout is over. But Barry, we're talking about Bedlam and sort of the pulse of the fans, and you obviously wrote earlier this week about how this maybe isn't Auburn, Alabama. Nobody's poisoning trees or unfortunately shooting each other after games. We may not have reached that level, but this rivalry seems to have taken a turn towards some definite sports hate. What's your sense of Bedlam at this point?
Well, it's two things. One, OSU fans are incredibly frustrated. I mean, they don't know what they have to do to find a way to win. Here's a stat I came up with. In the last 39 years, OSU has beaten the Sooners 6 times, I think, only once by single digits. Anytime it's close, the Sooners win. So that's just got to drive Cowboys crazy. OU fans have about, let's see, what game ended about 2:15 Saturday, about 2:16, a huge dose of superiority complex invaded Sooner Nation. All of a sudden, they're back on top and everything. Here's the deal: they're all mad at the media. I can tell you that. When OSU loses, they get mad at the media. When OU loses, they get mad at their coach. When OSU's mad at Gundy for losing, we'll know that they've come a long way in their program. But it's great theater. The stakes are high almost every year. The drama is high almost every year, but the results are the same almost every year. So for this series to take the next step, OSU is going to have to start winning some.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Mike Sherman into the conversation. And Mike, that game was so interesting, so compelling. We actually termed it the best Bedlam ever. Are you buying that was the best Bedlam ever?
Jenny, I don't know, but I need to confess a few things. First of all, if you remember our conversations before the game, that the kickoff was at 11 o'clock. We had bowl assignments looming large. So my plan was that we would not even write our sidebars about the Bedlam football game, that by 5 or 6 o'clock on Saturday,
Terrible idea.
Everybody would have had their fill of this game, and then it would be time to spin the whole thing ahead. And I don't know, we're on day 7 and we haven't run out of steam yet. So sometimes I'm wrong. Now, the other thing that's incredible to me about this game is that there were so many great moments in it that we had to do a sidebar for Tuesday's paper going through all the things that we missed. That's why I think it's the best Bedlam game. That's why I think it's the most entertaining. It's because we're still tallying all the things that were interesting to us. I for a minute there thought maybe I had talked Barry into something that I'd gotten wound up in the moment, but clearly it's not. Clearly from an entertainment value, I'm not talking about quality of play. We're not here grading an orchestra's performance. What we're doing is talking about the entertainment value of this game, and I've never seen a more entertaining Bedlam game.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine there is. I mean, I know 16-13 is a game that will go down as one of the greatest ever. But, to me, and you guys, we obviously thought and talked a lot about the cold heading into that game, and it was such a big part of that game heading in, and yet that's one of the factors that I don't even know if people will remember very much. Now, if you were there, I guess maybe that may be standing out in your mind, but that's not even something that we're really talking about. This game had so much excitement and so much unexpected plays and momentum swings. To me, there's still so much about the game to talk about, and people are still digesting. Gina, you were talking about, you're still getting emails about the play clock running out on the fake field goal and the Justin Gilbert interception. So people are still wound up about stuff.
Yeah, they are. And And maybe people will remember how cold it was because of the whole snowball incident. That might continue to be a. It just again adds to the drama, adds to the theater, like everybody was talking about. But I actually got an interesting email, and I forwarded it to Berry to see if maybe if he would include it in his email mailbag that he does each week. That someone emailed me that they think that the referee was signaling that they did not start the play clock in time, or did not start the play clock correctly when OU came out of that timeout before the fake field goal. So that was why it still went for a couple of seconds with it 0, that actually the play clock was wrong from the get-go. So I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but that was an interesting observation from an OSU fan. So he was like, hey, I hate to admit that, maybe that this was the way that it happened, but I thought that was interesting because I hadn't heard that from anybody yet, and that would certainly explain why the play clock was allowed to expire and you could still run that play. So that's just one theory.
Hey, Gina, let me add something right here. Here's where college football officials of all levels, could do themselves a huge favor. Why wouldn't the Big 12 just come out with a statement and say,
great point.
Yeah, why wouldn't they just say, or why wouldn't they make themselves available to be interviewed at some point? A conference call. Imagine what it would be like if the Big 12 did an officiating conference call Monday or Tuesday each week and allowed writers to ask them questions about calls each week. All this conspiracy theory stuff, and there's a lot of it that goes on, would be dispensed of. If what Gina is saying is true, or at least if we could get the Big 12 to talk about it. It's a modest proposal.
Well, and just to admit, if there are times where they've screwed up, just like players screw up, coaches screw up, we screw up, we make errors in the newspaper occasionally. I mean, it's like nobody's perfect, and so I mean, again, fans will be riled up if a call costs the team a game or something along those lines. But bottom line is that we shouldn't be afraid to admit our mistakes or to pretend we're perfect when we're not, because certainly nobody is.
Well, conspiracy theories among sports fans are rivaled this week by conversation only about the Texas head coaching job and what's going on with Mack Brown. So, folks, even though obviously we don't cover Texas like we cover Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, that is a team that is probably next in line for people's interest. Still sounds like Mack Brown is talking to university officials about his future, but all signs are pointing to him stepping down and Texas looking for a new coach. I think we got to start with the question, what is the likelihood that Nick Saban is the coach standing on the other sideline next year when OU plays them in the Cotton Bowl and when Oklahoma State plays them in Stillwater? Mike, let's start with you on this question. Do you feel like Nick Saban is the next coach at Texas?
I'm thinking it's less and less likely the longer this goes on. But my source right now, my best source for this is A.J. McCarron. So, and I'm sure Nick Saban had some things to say to Miami Dolphins players, associates, when he did not leave Miami. But I give it, I would say it's about a less than 25% chance that Nick Saban's going to coach the Longhorns. He's got a great job. I mean, a great job. He did not have a great job in Miami. He had the call of the NFL. He wanted to test himself as an NFL head coach. That didn't work out. I just see, how many times have you seen something like this? A guy leaving a place where he's won 3 of the last 5 national championships to go to a place that's won 1 in however long, what, my lifetime? 2 in my lifetime? I don't know. How much more money can Nick Saban spend? I say less than 25% chance.
Okay, Barry, what about the question of who's the next coach at Texas? Is it Saban? Is it somebody else?
Oh, I think it's more likely than not somebody else. I also think if you made a list of the people who most likely to be the next coach, Nick Saban would have the best odds. He's going to get offered the job. We know that. So, I think he's got the best chance to get it, but that doesn't mean it's 50-50. I think it's more likely a 20% chance or something. I do think this, though. I think if you're looking for a rational reason for Nick Saban to take the job, there isn't one. But he's just he's one of those personalities. He's a little bit of a restless soul. Looks for new challenges, invents things to motivate himself. and maybe going to Texas is one of those things. This is a guy that left LSU to go to the NFL, left the NFL to go to Alabama. So I can see him going to Texas.
Well, Jason, that begs the question. Nick Saban is probably on the – I mean, he's definitely on the Sooners' radar at some point, it sounds like. It's either going to be in the Sugar Bowl coming up or it's going to be in the Cotton Bowl come next year for the Red River rivalry. Is there a better case scenario for the Sooners? Is it take your medicine now or take your medicine long term?
Well, I mean, I think that they would rather take their medicine now than have to play him every year. Although I will say, I think Berry wrote about this earlier this week. I don't think there's any question that Nick Saban would make the Big 12 better if he was in it. I think he would raise the bar and make everybody better. I think he did that in the SEC. He did it when he was at LSU, and then he did it when he came back with Alabama. I think he made the conference better. So I think it'd be good for the Big 12 if they got a little dose of Nick Saban. But I don't think he's going to take the job. I agree with what Paul Feinbaum's been saying on his radio show this week and on TV that this is his agent Jimmy Sexton doing what agents do. He's trying to get him more money, I think, and I think he's using this as leverage at Alabama. And so I don't think he's going to take the job. I think he'll stay at Alabama. Although, heck, I could be wrong.
Well, we're not holding you to it, Jason. So we're not holding anybody to it. But Gina, if Nick Saban's not the guy, then you got to start looking down the list a little bit. Guys like David Shaw's name comes up. Art Briles was obviously mentioned before, probably not now, but interesting, different names that are probably going to get thrown out because of the nature of Texas's job, just how good it is. It seems like Mike Gundy's maybe a guy that they would at least look at. What's your feeling about whether that's even a possibility?
Well, I think that Mike Gundy would certainly be on their list. Again, I don't know how far up on that list, but when you just look at viable candidates, I think that Mike Gundy is someone you at least have to look at. I mean, just because of the success in the Big 12 the past.
We seem to be having some audio trouble with Gina. We'll see if she can't get restored. Oh, there she is. Go ahead, Gina.
Hello. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my computer. But I was just saying that, obviously Texas has seen firsthand Oklahoma State's rise and what they've been able to do in the Big 12 the past 5 years or so. There are connections between Boone Pickens and some bigwigs at Texas. So I don't know if that helps or hurts in this type of situation. But, I think he certainly is on the list. But is he at the top right behind Nick Saban? I don't know about that.
All right, obviously lots left to determine in the coaching carousel. If Mac Brown does leave, obviously there'll be some dominoes that'll have to fall. We'll just have to wait and see as we talk about Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, how it impacts them. Obviously, bowls could be impacted. Both teams have very high-profile bowls, tough opponents. We talked a little bit about OU's matchup in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. But let's talk about OSU playing Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. Gina, obviously Missouri is a team that struggled a year ago, their first year in the SEC, but has really rebounded, played for the SEC championship, lost to Auburn. Had they won, potentially had an argument to play for the national championship. As you've looked a little bit at Missouri, what do you feel like is the top 2 or 3 challenges for the Cowboys in facing the Tigers on January 3rd?
I think this is a really interesting game. I think it's one of the most interesting bowl matchups in the entire country. And so you just kind of look at Missouri, and obviously this is a team that Oklahoma State played 2 years ago in Columbia and blew them out with the Wheaton and Blackman squad. But James Franklin is 2 years older. He's now a senior quarterback and done really, really well. Henry Josie is still on the squad, a really good running back, a 1,000-yard rusher. They've got Dorial Green Beckham, the super recruit from 2 years ago. That's now their leading receiver. They have the Big 12 the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and Michael Sam, who has been kind of a pass rushing machine. So it's a good team, and I think this is going to be a really tough matchup for the Cowboys. But it's going to be very interesting to see both of these teams coming off a disappointing loss in their regular season finale, kind of how they rebound before this game and who comes out more motivated.
Sherm, let's talk a little bit about the Cotton Bowl for a second. What are the stakes for the Cowboys in this game? What do you feel like is on the line most for Oklahoma State in this game?
Well, I think this has been a good season for Oklahoma State. I mean, a very good season. It's not the Fiesta Bowl, but it's a really good season. And I really think that the stakes are they want to finish competitively. Gina alluded to this. Is this a bowl game between two teams that are both let down? Is this somehow to see which team shows up? Missouri, thought it was going to the BCS championship game. OSU, minutes away from another Fiesta Bowl. I think that's something to be coped with. But I also think this is a big-time opponent in Jerry's world, back-to-back for Oklahoma State. Think about this. Missouri, would they lose to Auburn and South Carolina in overtime? That's their two losses. There's not a West Virginia in there. There's not a gumped up a weird loss. Missouri's lost to two big-time opponents in big-time games. So this is a huge opponent for OSU, and I think if OSU's got any disappointment, this is a way to recharge your battery. I think the stakes are, can OSU finish strong? And if they win this game, it's like winning a BCS bowl. I don't buy this whole idea that this is a minor bowl, a lesser bowl. This is two BCS game caliber opponents.
Definitely so, definitely so. And I definitely I think that translates over a big-time bowl matchup, translates over to what we're going to see, obviously, in the Sugar Bowl. Barry, let's go to you for a second, talking about stakes. What is at stake for the Sooners in this game? Obviously, a lot of people, Vegas, pundits, people expecting Alabama to win pretty easily in this game. But stakes for the Sooners, what are those?
Well, I mean, I think it's I think it's more higher stakes for OU than in the typical non-championship bowl for this reason. If OU can win or even just play close competitively, I think it's a pretty good signal to recruits and to America that the Sooners haven't gone away, that they're still a viable national contender in most years. And I think, if they win or play close, I think you watch that game and say, hey, this team's pretty good. But if they get blown out, another Cotton Bowl type game, what we saw last season, I think it hurts the OU cause. I think people say this team can't compete with the best of the SEC, 2 straight blowouts. So I think there's a lot on the line for OU's status and prestige.
Well, Jason, my last question about bowl matchups, we'll be obviously talking about this a lot more as those games get closer, but this January 2nd bowl game, the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, as you've thought about this matchup and how the Sooners can potentially keep it close, maybe even win this game. I mean, they were in a game this last weekend that people didn't expect them to win, and lo and behold, they did. So what's it going to take to potentially have a similar outcome against Alabama?
Well, it's not going to be easy. I mean, I mean this is no disrespect to OU, but I really think their best chance is if Alabama's not interested in the game. I mean, and we've seen that before. In 2008, the Sugar Bowl against Utah, Alabama had just missed out on the national title appearance and didn't really show up and got beat by 2 touchdowns. Last year, Florida and Louisville, Florida was ranked number 3 and had just missed out, and Louisville kind of jumped out on them and blew them out. So I think that might give them a chance. Plus, if Nick Saban has taken another job, perhaps that might play into that as well. But I think if all things being equal, I don't see how OU has much of a chance at all in this game. I think Alabama's just too good.
Well, and it could be that the Crimson Tide come in there with the Heisman Trophy winner, A.J. McCarron, one of the finalists for the Heisman Trophy. And, folks, let's end talking about the Heisman. That trophy will be announced tomorrow, New York City. I think 6 guys were finalists this year, which is a fairly large number. There's been years here recently where only 3 and 4 have gone, but 6 finalists in New York. The last year's winner, Johnny Manziel, is there, as well as Jameis Winston. Let's start again with you, Jason. Who do you think wins the Heisman, and who would get your vote?
Well, I don't think there's any question that Jameis Winston's going to win it. I think the reason there are 6 finalists is because so many different people put different.
Oh yeah, thanks for calling me back. Great.
On their 2 and 3 spots. If I was voting, I think I'd probably vote for Jameis Winston. and I think I'd vote for A.J. McCarron second. Jameis Winston, to me, was the best player in the country this year. I think Manziel had a really nice season. He had a couple really bad games, though, that I think would have cost him. So I think I would have voted for Winston, especially after he wasn't charged. I think that sort of sealed the deal.
Well, and that's an interesting point you bring up, the fact that off-field situations were sort of looming over Jameis Winston this season, but cleared by prosecutors. And Gina, if you were going to vote, would you have voted Jameis Winston at the top of your ballot?
Absolutely, no question about it, especially after, like Jason said, the announcement that he wouldn't be charged with sexual assault came out last week, even though that case is still clearly going on with the accuser's attorney speaking today and suggesting or pushing for an independent investigation of how the investigation took place, I guess. But yeah, Jameis Winston was my vote. I probably would put A.J. McCarron on the ballot as well, and maybe even a guy like Jordan Lynch, who, he plays for a mid-major type team, but just had a monster season as a dual-threat quarterback, throwing and running the football. So that's probably how I would vote if I had a vote.
Well, Sherm, let's finish up with you. And it sounds like Jameis Winston is the guy that we're sort of thinking is going to be hosting that trophy tomorrow night. But his off-field stuff, I mean, the Heisman just seems to continue to have guys that are either winning or contending that have these off-field things going on. And even though, as Gina said, he's been cleared, there's this ongoing cloud over the whole investigation. A press conference this morning by the accuser's lawyer. I can't imagine the Heisman is too excited to see another probable winner with some off-field situations going on around him.
Well, I'll tell you who is excited. I'm excited. I'm excited that we're no longer voting in the Heisman Trophy race. I know that's not a popular opinion with everybody on our staff, but I will say this. There's so many issues looming over this that really get in the way of trying to put out a news product. Do we become moralist in trying to sort out whether Jameis Winston did something that would disqualify him under the stipulations of the Heisman ballot? Are we picking somebody who we can't disclose who the winner should be? I had a big problem with that when they came in the stipulations and said that we couldn't disclose our ballots until afterwards. So I'm very excited to be out of this process, and I think the Heisman folks have got to be devastated. It's another cloud hanging over what once upon a time was the best award in college football. I just don't know that it is anymore. I think there's too many of these complications. Johnny Manziel afterwards, Reggie Bush afterwards, and Jameis Winston, even though the charges have not been filed, it's still hanging over them. I think it's a mess.
Yeah, it definitely is. Cam Newton a couple years ago with the ongoing situation sort of looming over him. I was still voting at that point and didn't put him on my ballot because I felt like the question of, eligibility and those sorts of things was so up in the air that I just felt like it was hard to put him on there. It's a real conundrum, and Mike, you're right. The fact that we aren't voting, it's hard because you sort of like being in the thought process all year, thinking about who you're going to vote for. And I think it sort of has added to my interest in the Heisman, which is down a little bit this year, but it does remove us from making news or being part of news. And I think that was your feeling when all of this started to happen last year with the Heisman balloting, correct?
I was relieved that we had already made a decision based on their displeasure and threats to take away our votes because we had disclosed and published our votes. I feel like we need to be transparent as possible. And so we had already made a decision to get out based on that, and then this Jameis Winston thing happened. To lighten things up, though, Jenny, I would like just to close full transparency. I'm wearing this red hoodie, and I think people might wonder, it is actually a Tuttle Tiger football deal, not a Sooner one, okay, just in case anybody's wondering. I'm rocking the Tuttle colors.
All right, good to know. Anybody else want to show their apparel before we go? Or dogs or anything?
He's playing
Festival hoodie. That's what I'm wearing.
Festival hoodie for Gina, and where's Buster?
He's playing in the snow. I don't want to deprive him of that.
All right. Well, you guys are off the hook. You guys can go play in the snow, too, if you want to. And thanks so much for joining us on the Football Friday Hangout. Be sure to come back next week. We'll have plenty more football talk. Thanks, guys.